if your passion for something is very strong, then you'll be able to meet those challenges and be like, this is just part of it, but because I love what I do so much, I'm gonna keep it going. Otherwise, if you're not really that level into it, then it might not be great long term, or you're just gonna feel yourself stretching thinner and thinner and thinner. So I think just finding that why is super, super important.
This is Hanging Out with Hamza. It's a passion project about passions and projects, where I interview some of the most interesting people in my life and learn about the things that they love. Thanks for tuning in. In this episode, I have Dr. Sean Land. Join me as we talk about our vastly different paths in dentistry, how he balances multiple passions, and the importance of dental leadership. Okay guys, welcome to another episode of Hanging Out with Hamza. Today I have a close friend on the show. Sean is actually the first guest I ever had on this show. It was when I first initially came up with wanting to do a podcast, and we talked about it, and he was visiting Austin that weekend, and it was kind of crazy because we recorded the whole episode and it went really well. I think I was still trying to figure out what the emphasis of the podcast was, trying to figure out the flow. So he got to see me in my very initial phase of
alpha testing,
going through it. He was awesome. We talked about a lot, but we did focus a lot on dentistry. But with that being said, this episode is going to be very different based on that, and with the amount of time between that first episode and this one, a lot has changed, and for the good and the better. And I think we can now focus on more than just the dentistry, because in my opinion, I think there's a lot more to Sean than just the dentistry. I think a lot of people associate Sean with being an incredible implantologist, does all on fours, oral surgery. He's a badass when it comes to dentistry, and he's done a lot of incredible things. But being his friend for a while now, I've been able to see so many other layers of him. And I think that's what this podcast is going to be about. And it's about, trying to just enjoy the multifaceted aspect of your life in terms of your passions. There's no need to just have one singular focus. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's also this concept that we always have to be really good at one thing. And you should put all your energy into one thing instead of 1,000 little things. Whereas Sean and I have kind of come to an understanding as friends that it is possible to have multiple passions that you're obsessed with and multiple things that you're in love with. And so that's what this podcast is going to kind of focus on. And I think Sean is a good example of that. So with that long intro, I'm going to go and pass it on to Sean just to introduce himself. And if you want to go into how we met or anything else, feel free.
Yeah, no, that's an incredible intro, really. Yeah, it really means a lot. And this is round 2, right?
Yeah.
Cheers to round 2. I really think it's a great opportunity to come on again. Because sometimes I have struggled with that, as part of my image. All I am about is implants. Obviously, that's something I'm very passionate about, but also I don't want that to be my only, thing. Because like you said, I do love so many other things. And so I'm a general dentist. I focus my practice on implants and dental surgery, and currently in Atlanta. Trying to convince Hamza to come out, and he's trying to convince me to go out to Austin.
Yeah,
but
cool. Well, I mean, that's the thing with Sean is I think he's so good at what he does that a lot of people reach out to him asking questions about how to place an implant, how to do this, how to do that. And I've done it too. And I think it is incredible to see how good he is at that. But I told him that, as cool as I think that is, I don't think that's something that I always want to talk about with him. And I was no offense to you in that regard of not thinking that, I just think that there are so many other interesting aspects of you. And there's so many things that we've really become closer friends on, whether it's movies, music. For instance, we're currently in Colorado. We're staying together at an Airbnb. We went to go see Krungbin at Red Rocks, which was a conversation we had a long time ago where we both realized we had a lot of similar taste in music. We kept sharing music back and forth, and then we kept talking about how one day we were going to go to Red Rocks to see like an artist because I was telling him it was my favorite venue, and here we are now. And I think that all came down to like going past the conversation of implants and dentistry and stuff and realizing that there's like so much more we have in common. And I think that's like one of my biggest problems with dentistry or with a lot of medical professions is a lot of people align themselves with their profession as their personality trait. And I don't think that, it's not to like put them down or anything, but I just think because we go in school for so long and because we're like working so hard to get this title of DMD or MD or whatever, that once we attain it, it's like our whole lives were focused on doing that for so long that it's like almost like we don't see anything else. We have like tunnel vision. We're like, okay, I have this now and I need to uphold it and put all my energy into that. And I think like, while that's admirable, there's just so much more to life. Like, I don't want to die one day and be like, yeah, man, I'm like, no regrets for going to all those dental CEs and skipping like,
but sick dentist,
like skipping traveling and all this other stuff. So in my opinion, I think it's a great thing to have to be proud of your profession, but I think you're doing yourself a disservice by not also entertaining other aspects of your life that you're in love with. And there's no guilt behind it. And I think Sean's a great example of that. So I wanted to kind of bring up your passions and what other stuff you're really into and how you kind of approach balancing all of that together as a dentist and as, an implantologist doing all this other studying on the side, because you do focus a lot of side hustle studying and whatnot.
Yeah, no, and to kind of touch on what you said too, it's like we do work really hard for what we do in our profession. A lot of people in healthcare have to have that hyper focused area in their life. And I'm sure a lot of healthcare workers, just like us out there, also struggle with that identity. It's almost as like, oh, being my doctor self or my professional self is my identity because I work so hard for it. I think it's a good reminder of anything. Like whenever I talk to people that are amazing at their profession, whether like our friend that we just met, Tyler, who's a butcher, right? He's super good at what he does, but yet he has all these other things like hunting and loving to cook and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think especially after school, I think it's cool when we hear about other people that are like really passionate about multiple things, because it kind of, at least for me, when I hear about people like that, it reminds me that, oh yeah, like I can still have an identity as what I work really, really hard for, and still not, it's almost like a reminder not to forget all the other parts of life that you love. Like for example, like how we met online was like, I saw your account, I was like, oh cool, he's another dentist, but you post a lot about like pop culture and movies and like music. And that's the same vein I saw in how I love my own hobbies, is the same passion I saw for you that you put into your posts, like, and put into your like album reviews or like the movie reviews, or like just talking about cinematography. Like, oh, this is a shot. You just like post like a 15-second clip of like a certain movie, a certain shot. And you just talk about like, oh, like this is like, this shot was like this way because of this, or like it was just really cool. Like, oh, like this is how I'm gonna get my like fix for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that same passion for it is the same. It doesn't, regardless, it doesn't matter what it manifests itself in. It's the same passion. I think a lot of people have that, and it just needs to be reawakened.
Yeah.
So if anything, I hope anyone that listens to our conversation would maybe have that awaken in them. So
I think obviously it's. Well, because we were two dentists, I'm hoping that a lot of dental students and pre-dentals and even recently graduated dentists listen to this and understand that it's possible to like be a dentist and more, and like be able to do more. And I'm hoping that like seeing, all the stuff that you share about, like even you play guitar and you're learning Spanish, and you're super into food. For instance, we're here on Colorado and this is our first time doing like our solo trip together in a different city. We stayed in the Dominican, and we'll go over that later on, but this was our first kind of trip, in another city, and we realized that we travel very differently. Like we have a very similar mindset in that we love to explore, but we love to explore in different aspects of our senses. So for me, when I travel, I like to just go from like site to site and like walk around and explore, and then I'll stop to eat. But for me, eating is more like a sustenance thing. Like I'll stop, and I do love good food, but for me, it's more like, okay, I'll get a quick bite here. I heard this place is good, and then I'm gonna go back to what I was doing and like get on with my day. And like it's 2 to 3 times a day I'll eat or like put something in me as energy to go do the other stuff I was planning to do. But with Sean, he travels with his mouth. So like he's like,
for sure.
Where's these restaurants? We're going to this one, this one, this one, this one. And so yesterday was my experience of like Sean's way of traveling, which is
and I think
wrecked me today. But
I think we both woke up a little.
Yeah.
But hey, it was worth it. Was
awesome.
Taste, but
yeah, it was cool. And like I had a fun time experiencing it because we stopped by a restaurant and he would be like, let's just get a bite. Like we'll just get one little thing. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like you just like, you don't have to stuff your face with whatever you're on. It's like you're just trying little things here and there. And it was cool to see his passion come out of that, because I would just sit there sometimes and I obviously couldn't eat it, but I would just like see how much he enjoyed that experience. And that was like a fun part of it too. So
yeah, I think that was a cool thing we talked about yesterday too, like how our different styles of travel. I think it's pretty synergistic, because usually I'll just like literally just pick out the best food spots, and like if it's out of the way, I'm taking an Uber to get that, whereas with you, I think it was a good like exercise and like we both compromised.
Yeah.
Like, and I would pick, still good food spots, but prioritize the ones that were also near like a park.
Yeah.
Like, a cool area, like a cool street, like Tennyson Street, or like, stuff like that. So I was like, like you could do both.
Yeah. It was cool.
Yeah,
it was like
good,
being a married couple and figuring out like our compromise. I'm like,
what do you want for dinner, babe?
Yeah. We literally shared everything at the restaurants too. And like at one point I was like, what's crazy, man? We're two like straight guys and we're just like sharing all this food. And I was like we got ice cream and we just got like one tub, and we're just like sharing out of the same tub. And it was just like not something that I feel like a lot of my male friends would be comfortable doing. And Sean and I were just over here munching like 5 different ice cream flavors out of a tub, which was really good. If you're in Colorado, try the Little Man ice cream. We really liked it. So good.
So good.
But yeah, so I guess going into like the whole passion thing, I wanted to kind of delve into how you kind of approach balancing it out with your personal life and how it helps you through your career too. Do you feel like, I think you're one of a rare few people who really genuinely loves what you do with dentistry. I think there are a lot of people in the medical profession or whatnot that probably pretend like they like it or love it, but it's not completely fulfilling to them. So how did you approach dentistry in terms of finding what you loved, and how did you kind of figure out that this is something that you're like fully into?
Yeah, that's a good question. And before I go into it, I think I want to preface too that like it's okay if your job or your career is like not your main source of fulfillment either, because that's something I've learned that is different for everybody too, like someone like me, obviously I draw a ton of fulfillment from it because I just love it so much. And I love, treating patients and being able to do this for them. But just because someone isn't as that, it doesn't, it shouldn't matter. The main thing is as long as you take your job seriously and you treat the people that you're serving well and to the best of your ability while you're at the job, that's all that matters. Some people might have a job because that's what they need to support their family and themselves, and that's their main passion, and that is just as admirable. But I feel like if you have that reason, whatever that reason is, just having that reason and a good reason will drive you to do everything else well. Like at your job, will treat others. Of course, you hear people that get frustrated and maybe not love what they do, and it ends up spreading. To the people, their coworkers, the people they work with, the clients, patients, whatever. But I think if you have that reason, whatever that reason may be, that's just the most important. Yeah.
And we've talked about this because I'm probably one of those people. Like I thankfully love dentistry in terms of like, I love the aspect of helping people. I love interacting with people. I love working with my hands. I love the art behind it, but I haven't found that niche in dentistry that really aligns with like a passion. Like I think I kind of dipped into it slightly with cosmetics, and unfortunately I just haven't had the best experiences in the field of dentistry with like who I've worked for and whatnot. So I'm still on that path of like figuring it out. So it's inspiring to see you in that position where you're doing what you love and you're completely like 100% in on it. And I think every time I talk to you, that does give me a source of inspiration for it. But it also shows me that like you don't necessarily have to follow the natural path that most people take with dentistry. It was like just do general, then become an owner, then retire. It's like you can do a bunch of other things. You can go focus solely on cosmetics, or you can do like pediatrics, or you can do like this or that. And like you might find your passion along the way, and you might necessarily not even become an owner. You could partner up with a group or do all this other stuff. So if anybody's listening to this and they're early in their career, just remember that like you don't have to follow the cookie cutter path, especially if you know in your gut that it doesn't align with you. Then there's no risk in like trying different things, because this thing I learned in the last podcast that I did is that you try something and you fail, but you maybe lost like a year of your life or whatever doing it, but at least you tried it and now you know. And then you just go to the next thing versus locking yourself into something for the rest of your life and just not being happy with it.
Right. And now I want to, on your end too, it's admirable that you do something to the fullest and you find that's not right for you, and you have the courage to not keep doing it, to break away from that. And everyone has different, family, for example, my parents couldn't take as much risk with their careers because they came here. That's why I think a lot of first gen parents are so like, get your safe job and just make money. I think we have that privilege of having the stability to take risks, bigger risks when it comes to career. And when it comes to you, it's admirable that you are always assessing, is this right what I want? Is this my passion? And you keep switching whenever it's not.
Yeah.
It's just nothing wrong with that. It's just you keep trying until you find it.
I mean, it's definitely stressful a lot of the times. Like I've had multiple restless nights where I'm lying in bed thinking, am I doing the right thing quitting this job or leaving this job or like trying this new thing? For instance, this is new, but I just left my recent job and I am going to go into pediatric dentistry. And the reasoning is like, I love kids. I love working with kids. I love the challenge of trying something that I completely like stepped out of since dental school and only had like small experience, but I see it as like, even in my career, I like to wake up every day knowing that there's going to be a challenge today versus just going into the job, knowing that I'm probably going to just sit around, do some easy procedures, make like comfortable money and then go home. Like as great as it sounds on paper, it's just like there's a part of you that feels that itch for like wanting a challenge or wanting to be on your toes a bit. And I think when we're in dental school, we're on that every day. And it's almost like a dopamine hit. And I feel like once you lose that after dental school, some people love it. I don't. Like I like to constantly feel the challenge. And so that's another thing of like moving from job to job, is because I want to find something where it's keeping me on my toes. Because that's also, I feel like, keeps you going in your job and wanting to keep getting better and grow. So I mean, talking to you a lot about what you're doing and like the challenges you're facing has always been an inspiration from that aspect. So I appreciate you saying that. And for anybody listening, same thing goes for you. It's like if you're starting to feel really comfortable and you're unhappy, I think the unhappiness should be the more important part of that than like just being like, because comfort is so dangerous for growth when it comes to like dentistry and your profession, because we are in a profession where thankfully we make like a good amount to be happy and just like content. But if you're not like fully satisfied in your profession, then you're just gonna set yourself up for like depression long term and whatnot. And that's something that I fear a lot with like being in this field, because I feel like there's so much stuff you can do. It's just a matter of trying all these different things. So yeah, sorry not to get super dark about it. But
I think on that note, that's why I think it's so, important to find your why first, for whatever it may be. Like when it comes to your career, if you have a strong why, for every career, there's going to be different set of challenges or even styles of dentistry, or when we're comparing different career paths. Like, I always tell my brother, there's always going to be a set list of problems associated with each job that are just inherent or common in current practice. If your why is not strong enough, then those problems, you will not be able to be happy long term with those problems. if your passion for something is very strong, then you'll be able to meet those challenges and be like, this is just part of it, but because I love what I do so much, I'm gonna keep it going. Otherwise, if you're not really that level into it, then it might not be great long term, or you're just gonna feel yourself stretching thinner and thinner and thinner. So I think just finding that why is super, super important.
So when it comes to, I guess, your other passions or hobbies, what do you feel like you've really delved into lately that has been like on the top of your list besides dentistry?
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of older hobbies too.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, it's always an interplay of how much time I have in my life to put towards them.
Yeah.
But I've always, like, since high school, put like physical fitness at the forefront. I had a really good examples growing up. Like, my grandpa's super active. Like, I mean, he's 96 now. I mean, up until he had a fall, he was hiking almost every day, and he looked like he was 70.
Yeah.
So I always had that, like, oh yeah, like, why, if you stop moving, that's when you start losing stuff. So I think ever since high school, I was never like an athletic kid, but I started swimming in high school, and that was kind of like my first, like, I would say it was like my first passion. I was finding, not swimming itself. Swimming was fun. I did like it, but I think I was finding that, like, oh wow, I can push my body to like limits I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I think that is what I found about swimming that I like still have now, and just building kind of like a discipline, working at something, and that's kind of what will kind of be the topic of this podcast is, kind of being jack of all trades, but master of none.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this the other day, and I think the part that gets missed from that statement, that I think is the most important, jack of all trades, master of none. But the last part is, but it's still better than a master of one.
Yeah.
I want to change, like, better than, I don't think it's better than, everyone's different. What's better for you is different for me.
Yeah.
But I think when people use that line a lot, it's to like put themselves down a little bit if they do like multiple things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I'm not like great at any of them, But my argument is that, like, why not? Like, maybe you won't be 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 good at something, but you can get 7 or 8 out of 10 really good at something.
Yeah.
I kind of apply that when it comes to, like, food, like cooking, I really love, or Olympic lifting, which is one of the more recent things I picked up. Guitar, music, that all these things, like all my passions, is kind of like how I view it. It's like a long game. I don't need to get super good at them right now. Like, I have the rest of my life to kind of enjoy these passions and more that I don't know. Like photography recently, I've been getting more into because, I mean, well, you're always sharing like incredible photos.
Thanks, man.
And it inspires me to kind of like, even if I'm just around town, just to kind of, turn that part of my brain back onto the, like, let me look for cool shots or whatever. And it just makes, I don't know, for me, it makes life more exciting.
Yeah.
Like, whereas a normal walk would just be a normal walk, like, now I'm also like, looking for cool shots, or, oh, how the light's hitting something, and like just practicing that passion.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me more enjoyment to it.
Yeah. And I think like it carries over to everything too. Like, I feel like one passion can carry into another. Like, for instance, my photography has bled into traveling and traveling into photography, because when now I'm in another city, there are times that I'm like, no, I gotta go. Like, I gotta just go take photos. Like, I need to go explore and just take photos of random things. And that's when I'll come across some cool building, or I'll come across this or that. And so I feel like having all these multiple passions, like, as to add to what you said about there's nothing being wrong with it. If anything, it helps, because it feeds into all the other passions. Like, you're able to mix and match all of them too sometimes. Like, if you get really good at speaking Spanish, or really love learning other languages when you travel, then you can apply that passion to traveling and whatnot, and that can enhance wanting to travel more because you can speak in other languages. So I think it is important to do that, and I think it keeps your mind also just constantly going in a good way, because when you're like dealing with anxiety or depression, like, for me, in my opinion, like, creating and doing stuff in the artistic constant is what helps me get through that stuff, and whether that's doing this podcast or taking photos. So I think it's really important for people to find things like that can keep your mind going, so that you're not sitting stagnant and then getting in your thoughts and getting in your feelings and stuff like that. So
I really like that point, because, like, it's huge, right, for balance. Like we're talking about physical balance, mental balance, spiritual balance. Um, I think having multiple passions could absolutely help you with that. At least when it comes to like meditation, or reflection. I think there's like different types, or at least in my head, this is how I look at it. Um, I think there's like active reflection or meditation where you're actively thinking, reflecting about your current situation, your current life, or whatever it is that you want to reflect about. And you're actively sitting down to think about that. I think there's a passive type of meditation too, where you hear this all the time with people, like they do something to completely remove themselves from their situation so that you can give your brain a break from it. And so that can manifest in itself like photography, or like for me, my main one is like working out. Like after work, I have to go work out.
Yeah.
Because it just gives me, whether it be like 20 minutes, like yoga or Pilates, like video that I do at home, or whether it be like a 2.5 hour Olympic weightlifting workout, just to get my energy out. And not only that, but be able to, the thing I like about it's not just, oh, I'm going to the gym. Some people you can, but I think what keeps me going and keeps the consistency is focusing on and falling in love really with the process of those things.
Yeah.
Like getting better at body awareness when I'm in different positions for yoga and Pilates, or for Olympic weightlifting. It's a very technical sport. So like I record every set just to watch every inch of that bar come off the floor, what my body's doing, and how I'm moving the bar. And that allows me to truly disconnect. Like I can't think about anything else.
Yeah.
I'm so focused on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's another important form of meditation, is to have something that allows you to do that.
Yeah.
And then obviously like guided meditation with like a therapist or someone else, or even a friend, like when we have our conversations, or even just like questions that you see, that are written down and you sit down and think about them. I think those three forms are like meditation are really great, and having multiple things that you like doing can kind of help you find those three categories.
Yeah, I think even down to like the connection you said we have, like we're able to talk about so many things and share so many things together, and in that aspect of like mental health, it also helps because sometimes I'll be going through something and I'll just give Sean a call or vice versa, and we'll be able to talk about that. And then on top of that, we'll be able to nerd out about like a recent movie we saw or like an album we listened to. And I think it's nice because when you have these other passions that you share, you can have these conversations so easily with like friends, and it's like an easy way to reconnect and catch up on things. And yeah, I think that's like one of my favorite aspects of like having these friendships, is being able to like share my passions and like nerd out about things and not feel like the other person listening is bored or just not into it or whatever, because the 90% of the time we share the same passions, which is why we're friends. And so I think that's an important part of like also creating connections through them. So going back to your initial passion, your passion for implants and implant dentistry and all-on-fours, at what point in your dental career did you realize that that was specifically your niche of dentistry? And what was it that you feel like kind of fundamentally solidified that decision that this is definitely it? And how have you been able to kind of feed that going forward?
Yeah. I think the first step, being a D1, I came to dental school because I thought I wanted to be an orthodontist, to be honest.
Yeah.
But that's because that was the main experience I had, when I shadowed this an orthodontist who was really personable. And he taught me a lot of important things too, like that I still love about dentistry, like being able to connect with patients and see like a lineage of them, right? The mom would have come in for her adult orthodontia, and like because of that, now they bring the kids and the whole family's there. So that's the part I really, really liked about it. And, every time they come in, he would talk about something about their lives for a bit. And I was like, oh, it's so cool to have this many connections, like with your patients. Not that patients have to be your friends. I'm not saying that, but it's just cool to have like a deeper connection than just acquaintances with a lot of people that, you're doing some care on. So I thought I wanted to be an orthodontist. And when I came to school, I found out quickly that that's not what I want to do. Yeah. I found out I really liked working with my hands a lot, and doing very technical, very minute things like crown prepping. Learning that was like really interesting for me. But what started early on in my dental school journey, I would just go hang out at the different graduate clinics to get exposed to all the different areas of dentistry. I really didn't know. That was my whole first year. And by second year, I had really taken the keen like oral surgery. I just thought oral surgeons, I thought just shucked wisdom teeth and placed implants. But what I learned quickly was like, that's just a tiny amount of what they do. You know, dental alveolar surgery is just one part of what they do. And I really fell in love with the full scope of maxillofacial surgery, trauma, orthodontics, cleft. Like they can do so many things I had no idea an oral surgeon can do. So that really fascinated me throughout school. And that's kind of, I think, where the seed was planted. Hang out with them during breaks, do externships at other schools and at my own school. So that really built up. I was like, by fourth year, I was like, yeah, for sure, surgery is like what I love to do. There's definitely still aspects of restorative that I love, but I was like, I definitely need to be doing some of this. The next biggest thing for me was, so I did the Air Force for a 2-year scholarship. So they paid for 2 years of my schooling, and in return, I give them 2 years of service. One of those years, or no, in addition to that, the 2 years was a year of AGD residency, which I wanted to do. Like I heard amazing things about this, the residency in the Air Force. And I think that year really was life-changing for me, in the sense that it was finally an environment in which, and I was so blessed, like shout out to Dr. Soignan, Dr. Palazzolo, Dr. Black, Dr. Renda, all my attendings that were there were so, they just wanted us to learn and explore dentistry. Like we had general dentists and then one of each specialty, like endo, perio, and oral surgery and pros. Shout out Dr. Miller and Dr. Billy G if you're listening. But all these people were so passionate about what they did, right? And they're specialists, right? They picked that one thing. And I think it was really cool having all these people that were so passionate about what they did. And each of those people, their teaching style was to try to share that passion. And so it was a really good environment, very welcoming environment for someone to go in, and even if you didn't know what it was, what you liked, to see what it was, because you had individuals that are so strongly passionate. You know, it's good to have those kind of people to like a role model, right? And so obviously with me loving surgery, I really hung out a lot with perio and oral surgery, and like they had such an open mindset. They're like, this is what, in order to do this, you just have to read. And they taught me how to read. They taught me the importance of reading literature, how to suss out what's well-designed or what's not well-designed, how to seek out good instructors. You know, so there can be people that are really good at what they do, but they can't really teach it that well. It's hard to find people that can teach well and do really, really well. And so they taught me all these things. They taught me essentially how to fish, right? Instead of just teaching me, oh, this is how you do a third molar full dummy. Like, they really encouraged me to find the why, read behind what, beyond just the technical aspect of that procedure. And I think that has really what carried me through the next phase of my growth and finding my passion. Was like, wow, once I started reading, I remember trying to read for like operative dentistry about composites, shear strength, the Young's modulus of elasticity, whatever, all those things, right? And like, for some people, that's what they love. You see certain people like Marcus Blatz on Instagram, like that's his thing. He loves that kind of stuff. For me, that just wasn't it, because I would fall asleep reading those things. But reading about soft tissue thickness when it comes to implants, or all these neurosensory disturbances after third molar extraction, like all these different things about surgery, when I would read them, I could not get enough. Like, yeah. My first book I ever read was Zero Bone Loss Concepts, and I'm recommend that to you a bunch of times, and you're reading it now, and like, that was my first book I read, and like, dude, blew through it in like a couple of days. And like, that was the same story for a lot of other books that I've read since then. Was like, wow, I can really just drink this in, like I have zero issues. Yeah. And I think the reason why I think we're talking about this is so hopefully when you're trying to find passions or try to find it, is this what I want, or is this something I really like? I think it's just that feeling of like, wow, I can, like, it's just, there's zero barrier. There's no effort that obviously it takes effort to go study, but like once you start, it's like, wow, I'm so interested in it. Like it just,
it's like,
time passes. You don't even know how long you're doing it. And I think finding that feeling, once you find that, whatever it is, that's how you know, like, yeah, this is, this is it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's,
Cool.
yeah, kind of like how I found like this little area, of dentistry.
Okay. Yeah. I think, I mean, that's very much aligned with who you are as a person too. I think with anything you do, whatever you really fall in love with, you really get into, and you love to like read about it and learn all about it. And I think that's one of the things we kind of shared in common, was like this obsessive kind of approach to things once we start to really get into it. So yeah, I think to go also back to how we kind of first initially connected, it was definitely through dentistry and like the shared passion thing. But I think where we really got close was in the Dominican. So shout out to Figs for bringing us together, and also Bright Island Outreach for, just having such an incredible experience together. I think that's where Sean and I really also identified that we love to give back in terms of like our profession. I think a big part of like what we do is that we really love is being able to serve others and take care of people. And with Bright Island Outreach, they give us the ability to provide that care for people that really need it in the Dominican, for instance. And so is that something you kind of see as another passion of yours? How did you come across that aspect of your career that you really fell in love with?
Yeah. And again, you'll see a lot of similar themes come up. I love giving back, and community work is something I try to fit in as much as I can. Obviously we have busier seasons in our life where we have to focus on our own, but I think it's a great opportunity. Like Figs, that gave us that opportunity with Bright Island to finally do that in a busy time in our lives. So yeah, in dental school, we had this doctor. He's called Dr. Garvey. Dr. Garvey, what's up? But again, he's just another one of those individuals that is so passionate in that area of dentistry. Like he's a general dentist, and he ran a clinic that sees a lot of special needs patients. Typically it's pediatric dentists that are seeing these kind of patients, but he's a general dentist. He just loves working with the special needs population, which is incredible to see, and he was also really passionate about going back to this little town in Dominican Republic, Las Matas de Farfan. He's been going for 30 years. And so when you have someone that's so passionate about these things, those are the people that rub off on you, right? Mm-hmm. And so that definitely, when I met him in the halls and I heard about his trip and he was talking, yeah, you should come on, like check it out. And second year I went for the first year, and like that was it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, no matter how hard school was, or like you have to worry about all these competencies, and I was like, I can't believe I'm stressed about those things. I was like, I just came here and got to provide some care under the guidance of a lot of other skilled dentists. Like that feeling of gratefulness that you get from people, I was like, that's the core. That is at the core of what we do. And so all the other stuff I was stressed about, I was like, wow, none of that actually matters.
Yeah.
Obviously it's just the stress. That's what I was talking about earlier. It's like, those are the problems that that come with any kind of job. But if you find the why, that was the why. Like, wow, at the core, like you can impact someone's life like that.
Yeah.
And you can make, get that feeling, and like that kind of feeling greatly outweighs all the other crap going on in that D2 year. So yeah, that's really what kind of awoken like my passion for service, and honestly a big reason why I reached out to Figs to kind of try to work with them as well. Yeah, was because they were doing all this mission work, and I'm like, wow, like I haven't seen like a company like that was this much into it. They were doing it almost like every other year or every other year, I think, when they started.
Well, yeah. I think that's what we had in common too, is with Figs is when I initially was with them, I told them at like our initial interviews or whatever. Like, if you guys can consider me for all of your mission, like outreach trips, like I'll skip all the like modeling and going to LA and doing all that fun stuff. Like, I mean, that stuff sounds awesome, but like, I was like, if I have to like pick between the two, if you guys consider me for the mission trips more than all that stuff, I would much rather like put all of my energy into that. And I think they really took that into account, which I really appreciate. But it sounds similar to like what you probably set it up.
I was about to say, like, that is literally like when I was first talking to it was Allison at the time. Yeah. Shout out Allison.
Yeah.
OG. We love it.
Up. So this is all dedicated to her. And,
Yeah.
Anam too. Anam wanted to shout out.
Anam, yeah. Kara, Denise.
Yeah.
Everyone. I mean, Ruthie, like all these people that have, whether they've stayed or they kind of made their impact and are onto different things. Like all these people that we met through Fix have been great.
Yeah.
But yeah, my initial conversation with them was about that. I was like, this is not to be like an ambassador at all. Like I just want to like be involved. Like I got my life touched so much by these mission trips in school. And third year, so I went D2 year, I was a participant. D3 year, I was with my dental school boys and we ran the trip. So it was cool being on the organizing part of it. And then the third year we went again, the whole crew.
Nice.
And so I was like, I really want to just share, any kind of experience that I could have to make a trip run.
Yeah.
I was like, listen, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, and if that's only, you can use me as like a liaison. Almost.
Yeah.
And that was the exact first conversation I had with them too.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And then,
let's do some work.
So then we were supposed to initially go to Kenya together.
Yeah.
And we were both really excited about that because we had already become pretty close friends beforehand. So we were like mentally preparing to like be able to do some fun stuff together. We were like planning out like how we were going to like balance out patients and all this stuff. And then unfortunately Sean wasn't able to go because of some logistical stuff with his
the Air Force.
Things. Yeah.
So, the Air Force.
I mean, I don't know if you want to dive into that, but long story short, we weren't able to do that trip together. I went to Kenya and I was able to go with Figs. So thank you to Ruthie and Allison and Kara and everyone for helping me and us do that. But unfortunately Sean couldn't go. But 2 years later they had another opportunity. I had been trying to like introduce Figs to Bright Island, and like Figs being as incredible as they are, they like always listen to their ambassadors, and whether they are able to or not, they still take it into account. And for 2 to 3 years Ruthie was like kind of getting information about Bright Island, and they circumstantially were able to make a trip happen. And it was like such an incredible opportunity, and I was super excited to have these like two families. Like I worked with Bright Island when I was in dental school, same as Sean. Like we were kind of like setting up these trips with Bright Island and having these experiences. And so I thought it would have been an amazing match because they're both two amazing communities that really love taking care of people and taking care of their own people, like their employees and staff. And just like for them to come together was just like the perfect blending of like two amazing groups. And so to know that that was going to happen was like a dream come true. And so I was super excited about it, and I had the luck to be invited to come on it, thanks you to Trina. And then I found out again that Sean was going to be able to come again. And so I was super amped about that because we were able to finally like
yeah, everything happens for a reason, man. Like the Kenya thing was so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just super frustrating. Like we were, helping there's not even a dentist that was there. It was like their equivalent of like a very qualified assistant, like an expanded functions assistant that was there.
Yeah.
So we were like coordinating with that person.
Yeah, and it got delayed like almost a year, right? So we had a whole year of like prepping and getting equipment help, like helping them decide like what we needed for surgeries and setting up the whole dental aspect. Like there was no dental component.
And I mean, shout out Dr. Garvey again. Like I hit him up because I was like, hey, we need some, can we borrow some instruments? And he literally was like, yeah, you know where the closet is, just come down and pick it up and I'll give you the key. And I drove down, got instruments. Like he was like, that's what these instruments are for, that's just the kind of guy he is. Like they're just sitting in the closet, like bring them on the trip, so yeah, it was obviously a blow when I when my leadership at Air Force told me literally, you can't even make this up, like literally the day before they said you can't go.
I remember he gave me a call and was like, hey bro, I'm not gonna go. And I was like, that's funny, dude, but anyways, let's get and then so like within that day Sean tells me this, and I thought that he was gonna bring his like equipment from Dr. Garvey. And then I was like, oh shit, okay. So then I like called my mentor, shout out Dr. Bethel, and I was like, we went to his house and I just started like mass ordering like surgical components, and like literally just like overnight like grabbed a bunch of stuff. And I had to travel with a duffel bag full of like sharp items and knives, or like just basically things that you just, as a guy named Mohammed going through TSA, you do not want this stuff. And like, yeah, I had like a blast having to explain that with them. But yeah, I mean, like you said, things happen for a reason. And I think like, even though the Kenyan trip didn't happen, we were able to do the Dominican trip, which in my opinion was like so much more.
It was life.
Life changing in terms of a lot of things, like a lot of personal things. Like we shared a lot of stuff together. We stayed in a room together and like really bonded every day. And we just like, even after our long days, like it would be like 1 a.m. and then we would just be like in our room just talking to like 2 or 3 about like how the day went, or like life stuff and dentistry and everything. And I think like that was the beautiful thing about our relationship, is like it never felt like I was like tired to talk to this guy. Like I wasn't tired of him after like 5 days in the jungle. Like it was just like fun.
We're excited to get back and rehash.
Exactly. Yeah. And like even after that, we're just like, all right, when are we planning the next trip and stuff? And even this trip was a result of that. And if you're watching this right now, we're both wearing Hawaiian shirts, and we're replicating Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. If you haven't seen that, that's just another example of our like shared nerdiness and love for like movies and stuff. So we came to this concert wanting to dress up, kind of like have some kind of like commonality with that. So yeah, man, I think it's been like really cool to just share this friendship with you and just riff off, whether it's dentistry and whether it's like other stuff. And I think that's something that more dentists need to do. I think like there's such a barrier up with like communication with dentists that it has to be like professional and only related to this or that. But I think like when you realize there's like so many things we share in common with like nerdiness and like stuff like that, it breaks this barrier to be able to like have much more vulnerable and open conversations, and also remove the ego of like who's making more or like who's doing better. And I think like you've never made me feel that way either. Like even as badass as you are in like the realm of what you do, you never speak down or punch down or like approach people in a I'm better than you mindset. And I think that's something that's like really needs to be more common in dentistry. I think there can be ego around it. So do you have like any insight about that, or like what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, appreciate you saying that. You know, I to me, it's just like normal, you know, like I just like doing what I do, and there's something in dentistry for everybody. There's nothing that's inherently better. Like it just sounds weird to say to me. Like it's just different things. Like some people really like ortho, some people really like endo, or like you're still trying to figure it out, but you're leaning like cosmetics, a little bit of implants, maybe even like pediatrics. Like you work great with kids. Like you're about to go to the hospital and start dressing up as Spider-Man and working with kids. Like that's awesome. Like that's your area of like one of the areas of passion that you have, you know? So yeah, and I agree. It's like, it's kind of sad to hear from you. I hear from my other friends in dentistry saying like, it's just so hard finding a good environment and a good mentor. Right. And I think to kind of sum up a lot of the things that we talked about, how to find and how to, once you find your passion, how to find, like, that's the first step, is finding the why. And then looking for others, like a passionate individual that like a role model, right? Finding that role model is key, because then you can know that that's possible to do, right? Whatever you think is doing. And then 3 is finding that environment, right? And in order to start doing those things, you know, like for me, it was coming out of the military. You know, I was able to be credentialed for a lot of expanded things like sedation, moderate conscious sedation, you know, full bony thirds, like perio surgery, like everything I can do, besides implants. That's the reason I got out. But it was a great environment to help me start that. You know, I wasn't just popped into an office, like a private practice office, and be like, all right, there you go. It was a, you know, I had the facilities for sedation, everything, all the surgical equipment I could ever need. And because of that, able to do the things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I think finding that proper environment is also very key, you know, and it sucks that it doesn't exist more based on your experiences and many other people's experiences. And that's a part of the reason why I think that is something that I want to create in the future, create that opportunity for some, like a young me or a young Hamza, to come and like experience dentistry for what it can be, from a person that really loves it, from a person that's just luckily I've come across a lot of people that just love dentistry the same. And like, I'll shout out Dr. Polly, who is one of the other guys that's in town, also does full mouth implant rehabilitation and stuff like that. But at one point I was discussing working with him. From the beginning, he's been, I mean, he just loves that. He's like, yeah, I got a deal from DSO, like offering me 14 million for my practice. But he's like, I really just want someone to take care of my patients, that cares the same way that I do. And there should be way more people like that. It's, and even if there is overlap of what we do, he's never gotten weird about it or whatever. Like, he's always like, hey, like, let's do a case together. Like, let's, whatnot. And like, those kind of people are rare. And I think hearing about the other side and hearing about how rare that is, right? To me, that's like, that just should be the baseline. But realizing that it's not the baseline, it makes me want to exude that even more.
Yeah.
And I think eventually at one point in our careers, we're going to be those kind of like people to do that. And hopefully others can see that and like, just keep spreading the love.
Yeah, I think it's super important. And it does suck because, I think when we get into the field, you think it's going to be like rainbows and sunshine and like everybody just wants to be friends and hang out and help. And like, you think that it's like, it's a group practice. So you think it's like a group setting and everywhere you go. But I've realized more and more there's a lot of gatekeeping and a lot of like
egos.
Yeah, ego is, it all comes down to ego. Like there's been places I've worked at where ego has just completely destroyed like my relationship with this person or just like my experience at this office. And it sucks because at the end of the day, like I'm just a young dentist that's like hungry and thirsty and wants to do more and learn more. And a lot of it is like held back from you because you're either not ready or you like, you need to go take this class or do this. And it's like, they're not willing to help you because they want to focus on their own self and their own career and like their own growth. They don't really care about you. You're more like the addition to their practice or whatever. And I think it's so important to consider these new associates coming out as like a possible, like they're part of your practice. They're like, their family. They're not just like work horses or work ants and stuff. And I think it's, like you said, it all comes down to ego. And I'm really like proud of you for always setting that aside, whether it's like conversations we have about implants or even when we're in the Dominican, you're always willing to help others without any sense of like, let me show you what to do. It's more just like, hey, like if you need help, I'm happy to help you. And it was always in a sense of like, I'm here to support you, but I'm not here to like tell you what to do. Like you do what you feel comfortable with.
And it was cool. Like I loved doing that too, and because like, when people help me and give me that feeling, I also love that. And I'll shout out Tara here. But in the Dominican, she was like, obviously she loves cosmetics, but she was like, I feel like I want to do something more surgical, like flap. There's an immediate denture case. I was like, you want to do it? And she's like, well, like work on it with me and we'll do it. And she ended up doing the whole thing. Like, great. Like, wow, like I had just the confidence to do it because you were right there. And I was like, I didn't do anything. Like you knew I gave you pointers here and there, but like that was your hands, and she executed well. And it was awesome. It was awesome to be able to do that. Someone that like isn't really sure, like maybe not even believing themselves yet about something, and then just watching them do it. And reignite that like, oh yeah, I can do this.
I mean, that's like all we want to do at the end of the day is get better and do better. And I think a lot of egos take it as like, oh, they're trying to be better than me or get better than me,
right?
Like steal my patience away. And it's like, no, that's not really, majority of the time that's not the case, but unfortunately that's like the mindset that's been taken. To go back to one of the earlier questions, I think you went on a little bit of a tangent, but we didn't get to like focus on the point of balancing your passions out. I think it is good to have multiple passions, but I think it's also important to be able to balance them to where they don't consume you in a way. I think there is a way to be a little bit overstimulated by it or possibly just like burn yourself out with it, right? So how do you find that balance and like how do you kind of put equal energy into them so that you kind of sustain them long term?
And that's a great question. I mean, like we have finite amount of time. We also have different seasons in our lives where we have to focus on work more and whatnot. But I think for me, obviously work would come first because that's, patients to take care of. Like if I have to read to improve patient care. That's what I'm going to prioritize at this point in my career. Like for example, like I would say fitness is the other biggest thing. That's the next biggest time that I can spend on. So those two, because again, like what I was talking about, the different kinds of meditation, like I need that part, like that more passive type meditation where I can take my mind off things, right? And also for the physical, it's tough when dentistry is really hard on the body. So that's what I kind of prioritize. And when I do have time for it, like music for me is huge, like the creative outlet, like you have a lot of those too. And I think it's all about just, obviously with music, there's nothing I'm not prioritizing as high because I don't need to do it as often for me to get, I guess, the benefits from it. Which is just to exercise that part of my brain once in a while. I've been trying to be better about it. Like I've set up my guitar on a stand. I bought a stand, so it's in my living room. So if I do see it, even if it's once or twice a week, I'm much more likely to play it versus like before where it sits in a case and I don't play it for months. I think it's just all about finding the balance and what time you have in your life for certain things, and then finding an activity maybe for each one of those categories so that it's just so you can also fulfill true balance of what we talked about, like how to you can't just only have like a passive form of meditation, right? You can't just only go out there and just run or slam weights and to get away from your that's meditation. You still need to think about it, right? Create room for self-reflection, active meditation, but just finding an activity that fulfills those kind of areas in your life, physical, mental, spiritual, and kind of prioritizing those things and finding a hobby that kind of also fits into those is kind of how I try to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then would you say there is one hobby or another that kind of gains, like how are they able to interconnect with each other? Are you able to kind of mix and match the two, or have you ever found like one passion just isn't aligning with your others and just kind of had to let go of that one?
Not really. I mean, I think the way I just really like, obviously there's so many different interesting things in the world. It's just like if you find something interesting, like for me, Olympic weightlifting really, like I started getting again burnt out on working out. So I used to do like powerlifting / bodybuilding type training, and it was fun for a long time, but I just started getting really boring for me, and so picking up Olympic weightlifting made me fall in love again with it because it's so technical, and it requires a lot of flexibility that, I mean, I thought I was already pretty flexible, but I realized that there's a lot of like supporting muscles, like upper back, that I was not strong at, that I really had to work on. And it was humbling because I was like, oh crap, I thought I was like really, really strong at the lat pull down or whatever. But my brother made me realize like no, the simple things as raising your arm over your head for I's, Y's, and T's at a when you're sitting flat is also really hard because it's a focus on the smaller areas. I think it's just finding the intricacies of something and then just focusing on those things can really help prevent you from that, or make you fall in love with something again.
Yeah. Okay. So even like within those passions, you found like sub passions that were more aligned with like.
Well, it's more so just the thing of just learning something, like the nuances of it. And to go back to how it kind of like blends together, like directly, like I get physical benefits from at work. Like I can be bending over from surgery, it's really hard on the back and the neck. And so I feel like because I work out so often, the next day I don't feel it. Whereas if I didn't, I know I would be super sore, and other things is breathing. Like I think for the probably first 8 years of me working out, I had no idea how to properly learn how to brace. By breathing to my belly and expanding, the increasing my intra-abdominal pressure. I thought I was doing it correctly, but I wasn't. And through stuff like getting back into yoga, and also learning correctly how to breathe for squats and whatever heavy compound lift, I've truly learned how to do that kind of breathing, and it also helps me in other areas like dentistry. Whenever I bend, every time I bend, before I'll get a good belly of air, then I'll go bend, because then it supports all this area and your back doesn't take as much strain. Another area I use breathing is like breath work, like like in the Dominican when we had Chris, shout out Chris, Dental Yogis, show his passion for breath work. Like I was like, oh wow, okay, yeah, you can get these kind of feelings and get to a certain mental space just by using your breath, which is incredible,
Yeah.
and then also using your breath as like a focus point to get through hard poses or to get a deeper stretch. Like I've learned to use that in uncomfortable situations for myself and also for my patients. Whenever I give patients injections, and I've been doing this for years, is just I breathe with them. I tell them this is how we're gonna breathe. Deep breath in, 3 seconds, hold it at the top for 1 second, and then slow exhale. And I breathe with them. And it really helps patients kind of take their mind off that too. So yeah, just like it's cool to be able to connect all the dots with, what you like doing, and it just kind of just naturally flows. It's just your life.
Okay. I guess like on the basis of all these passions, I want to go into like your number one passion, which is me and our friendship and how we I guess became friends. I kind of gave my perspective on it, but what would you say was like your approach to like our friendship and how we kind of initially became friends and how you identified that this is like a friendship?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like when we first met on Instagram, I think it was just like the initial draw of like, oh, like this guy takes really cool pictures, like he's got a keen eye for stuff. And then you sharing your, just seeing how you talk about pop culture or movies or music, like just the way, it's not what you say, but it's how you said things. I was like, that's the exact kind of energy I have for like what I like to do. I was like, that's really cool. Like he has that. Like I think that's like the main thing in common that we underlying, right? That kind of ties into everything else. And then just like we probably send each other like dumb memes, like and it was great because like that's a great way to, I don't know, you just learn about someone else's personality through the memes they send, and just like throughout the years from those experiences, like we talk about relationships and harder stuff. I think that led to bigger conversations like that. And just like every time it happens, it's like obviously when you open up to somebody like that, it's like the first time, it's obviously you're like, I don't know how they could take it or respond. But I think each time it's been like, wow, like the other person just like, I always feel like you really listened, and then without judgment, and like responded without, just like asked questions where they need to be asked, and but otherwise just like very understanding, like you seek to understand, which was big. And I think that is another thing I really enjoy about our friendship.
I think it's hard, especially like in, I don't know, I don't want to generalize it to all straight males, but like I think even just being like a straight guy with friends, it can be hard to also open up and be more vulnerable. Sometimes it's getting better as like the years pass, but I think it's always like an initial discomfort of like just opening up and being a little bit more, comfortable with sharing like hard things you're going through or like relationship stuff. And I think we kind of started that pretty early on. So it was like a pretty easy connection to make where we both identified that like we were very comfortable talking about that stuff and there was no awkwardness or I don't know, like inhibition behind saying anything. And I think it's been like a strong theme throughout our friendship. And even now, like, since being here, we've had a couple of like really deep, vulnerable conversations that we're both going through like certain things in our lives. And I think that's another important aspect of like male friendships that has been missing. And there's been some male friendships that I've like let go of because there was no substance behind it. And we talked about this too, about how hurtful those can be, but like ultimately it's like just puts you down a path of like better growth or like, people that matter around in your life. And so that's been like something I've definitely like started to come to terms with a lot more lately. And like friendships like this are what help justify the decisions. But yeah, I appreciate you saying all that. I think it's always nice to hear it from both sides because I think we both have such different things going on in our lives, whether it's like what we're into, our current career, like even though we're both dentists, we do completely different things. Like we're not even related in any end, but I do find like what you do interesting. And like I love to learn from you. And in that regard, hopefully like there'll be a point where, you might be like, yo, how'd you do that or do this? And like it's always like nice to be able to share that stuff with someone. But yeah, man, I think I'm very thankful for like our friendship. I'm super grateful for the experiences we've had and what we're gonna have in the future.
Yeah.
And yeah, on behalf of like everyone that learns from you and looks up to you in that oral surgical aspect of things, I think you deserve major props for all that and what you do. And stay humble, like keep having that attitude, because I feel like it's a rarity, and hopefully that'll just stick around. I don't think it ever will be an issue, but if it does, I'll definitely humble you.
Oh yeah. I expect you to.
Yeah. But I usually like to end the podcast. I haven't done it in a while, but like I usually like to end it with like anything you might want to add to it, or any questions you might have for me, or anything that we might not have covered through this podcast. So is there anything else you want to throw in?
No, man. I think we covered this main topic of being a jack of all trades and embracing that. And yeah, I mean, I can't wait for the next one. The next topic that we want to talk about. 'Cause I think we have a lot to share.
We planned that we're going to do a Japan trip together.
Yeah.
So we're going to manifest that on this podcast. And hopefully the next episode will be in Japan, in some cool hotel, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Be talking about, our next subject matter. So yeah, with all of that in conclusion, I want to say thanks, Sean, for coming on the podcast and just taking time to talk about this stuff and educating people. I want to say thanks to Figs for bringing us together and helping this friendship kind of strengthen. And shout out to Trina, Kara, Denisa, Allison, Ruthie, like everyone. There's just so many people that helped make this happen. Anam, of course. And yeah, shout out to Bright Island Outreach for giving me such an amazing opportunity to be out there and do incredible things and strengthen this friendship as well. So I want to end this podcast with sharing your socials. First of all, is there anything you want to share? Your social media will be in the profile. And is there anything else you want to tell the public about what you're doing right now? Or
that's a good Sean Evans question. I always love that question that Sean Evans does. But
yeah. You want to announce any movies you're doing? Or...
Oh yeah, feature hit that's coming up. No, I think if you want to follow me on my Instagram, it's Dr. Sean Lan. That's DRSEANLAN. Be in the description. I just love sharing, obviously, dental stuff, but other stuff too.
Yeah.
Just sharing my passion about just learning. I think if there's anything that I want to share, is just to stay curious. If you stay curious, you'll never be bored. And you'll just be interested about like life. Life is so awesome. There's so much it has to offer. There's so many cool things. There is experience. I really do think that being curious like will help you in so many aspects. Like when it comes to career, that's why I always say always a student. Because there's always something to learn, and that keeps dentistry always interesting for me. And you could apply that for anything else too. So I think, that would be the thing I would want to leave is stay curious and stay curious.
Okay. But I'm going to go ahead and end it with, that's the end of the episode. And thanks for hanging out with Hamza. And just remember, all the information is in the profile. And please feel free to like and subscribe and rate this podcast. All right. Thanks, guys.